Now next, I'm going to go ahead and put in the flower image into this composite. So I'm pressing Control 0 so we can see the whole thing. I am going back to the flower 1 image. I'm going to give myself a break and use the Quick Selection tool. The Quick Selection tool is the alternate tool to the Magic Wand tool. In fact, it is the default tool on the Tools panel. In the last lesson, we used the Magic Wand, so you might have to hold down on that tool to select the Quick Selection tool. I am zooming in a little bit by pressing Control+++, or you can use Command+ if you're on the Mac. Now, make sure you've got the diameter set at something that will work well. Mine is set at 10. You can see that up in the control panel. Come back down. If you need it larger, remember right bracket, smaller left bracket. I'm going to leave it at this size for right now and just paint over my image. And I'm just painting across this flower. And notice how quickly Photoshop recognizes like values and activates a selection for me. Now notice that I'm grabbing a little more than I want. Don't forget that I can hold down the Alt or Option key and click in those areas that were included that I don't want to include, and also that I can make my diameter a little smaller and without holding any modifier key add back in that petal there. I'm going to scroll down, and you know, I'm not going to be perfect on this, and I'm intentionally not going to be perfect on this because I want to show you some things that you can do once you have created this mask. Now, I don't really want that big, large area, so I'm holding down my Alt key or Option key, and then I'm letting go of my Alt key and adding that in, Option or Alt. And I also want to paint this center section in. So it's not a perfect selection, but it's pretty darn close, and it was pretty darn quick, hence the name. This is the method that I prefer to use to remove a background. I'll select the background if it's easiest to select that, or select the item itself. I'll make sure that this is the item that is active and not the background, and yep, my background, you can see the highlighting is not going around the edge but actually around the sunflower. And then I click on the Add Layer Mask button. And again, the reason I use this method is because if I need to go back in and fix this mask, like for instance, if I need to come in here and paint out this blue area or add a leaf that was missed or clean up the edging, I have the original intact. In fact, if you remember, I did this in a previous lesson. I can hold down my Shift key and I can click on that mask, and then you can see the entire image. You can even Option click if you want to see the mask itself. Option click again to bring this back. Option Shift click if you want to see the mask as a quick mask. Now I'm Option shifting again, or Alt shifting, and zooming in a little bit down here using the spacebar and Control key. And here's a little quiz time. I want to remove that blue. I make sure I'm active on the mask. I take my paintbrush. What color do I paint with? Black, yes. So if I paint with black, which I didn't, Control Z. Now remember, if you're painting with the wrong color, the foreground or background color, you can hit X to quickly switch those colors. Now my brush is a little bit soft on the edge and a little bit too large, so I can undo that, Control Z. I can press the left bracket to make it smaller, and then the Shift right bracket to make it harder. And now I can paint this in just a little bit more accurately. Now I don't want to do this around the entire image. So don't forget that I showed you something called matting, which really wouldn't work on this particular image because the mask is here. But there's something similar that can help you, and that is that mask panel. And so if you don't see the mask panel, make sure you go under Window and pull up Masks. And you'll notice that in here, I can click on Mask Edge. I can feather a little bit if I want. Now notice I'm viewing this at 748%, so it's not really this pixelized. I can smooth out my selection, or choose not to smooth it as much. Set the contrast, the radius. I can even contract or expand my selection. Now I'm going to press Control 0 to fit this in window, you'll see that I've smoothed out this edge or the selection, but I still have some errors in here that I intentionally made so that you could see how I can fix those using the mask. So I'll choose that this all looks pretty darn good the way it is. I'll zoom in by holding my space bar down and control key. And again, now I'm changing my tools panel to 2 columns so you can see my foreground color is black. And of course I can just come in here, make my brush size larger. And this is the great thing about using the mask. I can quickly come in here without worrying about cutting into the leaf and discovering it a week later that I haven't actually kept the entire image. Because if I am doing a sloppy job here, which I am, again intentionally, I can press X, make my brush size a little smaller, and paint that back in. It's such a great thing and such a great way to remove backgrounds by using masks, because you can get a much less contrived look and blend your selections a little bit better into other composites. Now I'm pressing Control 0, zooming in. I'll just get rid of this blue background in here. And again, I'm doing it with painting so you can see how easy it is to use a mask. Go a little too far, that's fine, X. The other really great thing about this is notice that, you know, I might have a little bit of a harsh edge here. I can change my opacity to about a 50%. And that way, when I am painting in here, I can fade this out. I don't have to bring it back full force. So I'm sitting here pressing X frequently, going back and forth and kind of smoothing out that selection until I get it just the way I want. Coming in here, I want to make sure that black is forward. I'm still at 50%, which means that I might have to click on this a couple times. I'm going to make this a little smaller and come in to remove this area. But the great thing is, if you maybe are an artist and haven't felt like an artist in a while, you can see that you can almost use painterly motions to paint in your mask and get your selection to look just the way you want it to. Now, if I have some other areas up here, like you can see, I've got some funky little areas between the flower petals. And again, if you're doing web art or something where somebody's not going to typically zoom in to look at it real closely, you don't have to be this precise. I am at 382%. You can see that down in the lower left-hand corner. So a lot of these details will not be noticed.